Ryan.
Today, we are learning basketball with Brandon Benson, basketball coach with Flagler, experience from Division I to NAIA to prep, coaching at Northwestern, Middle Tennessee, Roosevelt University, Gulf Coast State, and DME Academy. Welcome to the pod, Brandon. How are you doing today?
Man, I'm glad to be here. I appreciate you having me, man.
No doubt. I can't wait to dig into a little bit of your coaching philosophy, but let's back up a minute and just kind of start from scratch. How did you end up getting into coaching?
Wow, it's somehow a long story at this point. So I was coaching in high school, and when I was in high school, and I really kind of fell in love with it then. My dad is a baseball coach. My mom was a softball coach. Everybody else in my family is pretty much on the baseball side of things. And I've always been one to kind of zig when everyone else is zagging. So I decided to get into the basketball side of things. Really kind of fell in love with it when I was coaching at the high school level. And I ended up becoming a student manager at Middle Tennessee State when I, entered college. And I couldn't have been luckier. It was really the opportunity of a lifetime. Didn't even realize what I was walking into, really. I knew they had success. I knew they were well coached. I knew a thing or two about them. But the year I kind of agreed to join them, the following, following school year was the year they beat Michigan State in the NCAA tournament. So I kind of got in at the right time. And it was really amazing to be able to watch that from afar and then kind of jump into it when they were kind of already rolling. And it was kind of my job to come in there and not screw it up. And just kind of be of a small, play a small part in a really special thing that they had going there. Really amazing opportunity I had at the time to kind of just be a fly on the wall for such a really well-run program and so many different facets, working for Coach Kermit Davis, who ended up going on to coach at Ole Miss. Really one of the best basketball minds and program builders, I think, that has existed in college basketball for a multitude of reasons. We were fortunate to have some incredible players on the team over the years. I got to work with back-to-back conference players of the year in Ja'Cory Williams and Nick King, two guys who ended up going on to play in the G League and professionally overseas. They're still making good money playing this game overseas. Got to be around a lot of talent there and some really good coaches. Ronnie Hamilton, who's at Louisville now under Coach Pat Kelsey. Win Case, who's still on staff at Ole Miss. Coach Greg Grensing, who has been all over the map in college basketball. Got to work with Kyle Korver at Creighton under Coach Dana Altman. And, really, really special staff to get to be a part of there. I was a freshman manager with about 10 upperclassmen managers who all wanted to be part of something special as well. A lot of them have gone on and to get into coaching or basketball in some sort, a lot of them at the high school level. And so I didn't even realize kind of what I was walking into at the time, but it was really, really special. My first year as a manager, we made the NCAA tournament, won the conference, won 31 games, beat Minnesota in the first round of the tournament. Really, really kind of special to be a part of that up in Milwaukee. My second year, we won the conference again. We were ranked number 24 in the country at one point. And being at a mid-major like that, kind of really before mid-majors, I feel like we're kind of getting the respect they deserved. And we kind of unfortunately learned that the hard way. We suffered a tough loss in the conference tournament right after being ranked nationally. And didn't really get the benefit of the doubt from the committee, missed the tournament, ended up going to the NIT. But, aside from that, just so many amazing memories, getting to be a part of that staff, getting to be like I said, play a small part in working with the players and growing relationships with them and just kind of learning on what winning looks like. And I've taken that kind of expression and a lot of these points along with me in my coaching career. Like I said, I really had nothing to do with it. I just tried not to get in the way. But I got to really see what running a program looked like, what a winning program looked like from a competitive standpoint, from a practice atmosphere, from, the detail orientedness of this coaching staff and how the players kind of really embodied that stuff on the court. It was really special. It really was. It was one thing I've said many times. I wish it was something I could have, bottled up and kind of found that magic formula and carried it on in my path. And I've been very fortunate to be part of some special staffs. And I really am proud of my managerial background. I know it's a thankless job. I know it's not an easy job. But it really really helped me learn kind of the behind the scenes of what it takes in college basketball and how everybody plays a part, no matter how big or small, in the success or lack thereof of a program. And I got to, I was very fortunate to get to stick on there when our staff changed, get to work for Coach Nick McDevitt, who's still at Middle Tennessee, who took UNC Asheville to multiple NCAA tournaments. Great staff there. A lot of those guys are now coaching in the Power 5 level or beyond. So really, I've just been kind of lucky. I really have. And I kind of, like I said, I'm proud of my managerial background. I am very glad that these days it does seem that managers get a lot more respect. They kind of have pathways to get into, whether it be the NBA or graduate assistantships, kind of like I did, or whatever the case may be. Managers really do get the respect they deserve, which is great. It really is. Jay Billis calls them the hardest working people in show business. So I always love that quote. And, so that's kind of how I got started and, kind of got rolling from there.
Well, I dig the experience. And I mean, you started from the ground up. What kind of lessons would you say you took from being the manager, doing the dirty work early on, that you might be able to kind of establish as you get different positions throughout coaching?
Sure. Man, where to even begin? Well, one thing was sometimes you realize in those capacities, if you're getting noticed, usually it's for the wrong reasons. So you really kind of just want to play your part. It makes you humble in a good way. You're not getting any credit, and that's totally okay. Nor are you really getting any blame if you lose a game or whatever. But behind the scenes, in a locker room, on the court, one thing I was really lucky to be able to do was, being at a mid-major at the time, kind of before staff started to expand, before staff started to get maybe one or two more assistant coaches. We didn't really have that. We had 3 assistant coaches. We had a director of operations, Dobo, 2 GAs, and that's it. There's no video coordinator. There's no director of player development. We certainly didn't have what they have now in terms of GMs and some of these all new kind of positions that they have, which is great, but we didn't have that at the time. So, Coach Davis is about as meticulous a coach as there is and detail-oriented and watching film, making sure we were had all that stuff down. And so, and the graduate assistants, we didn't have video coordinators. They're the ones kind of cutting that up for coach. And so somebody had to be out on the court working out the players. And I kind of lucked into that as an 18-year-old, not knowing anything that I was doing, just trying to get out there. And I thought I was a coach. I thought I knew what I was doing. I didn't know nothing. But I got to work out some really, really good players and kind of get in the fire with them. And I think that's one thing I learned is kind of about sweat equity. You hear that kind of phrase a lot. Guys, that's a really good way for people to develop trust with players. Kind of learning from them, just putting in the time and hours to get them better. They really do appreciate that stuff. Kind of just being in the fire with them in that sense. So I kind of learned how to develop some player development chops, I would say, has been something that I've kind of tried to hang my hat on over the years. How to do stuff within the offensive concepts that we have on the team, kind of teaching points that they may see on the court, echoing some teaching points from the coaching staff. So that was really cool for me to be able to do that side of things. Obviously, then there's the less glamorous sides of being a manager, laundry and wiping sweat, whatever. And that kind of really instilled in me some, like I said, I mentioned humility already, but being above no task, realizing that every small little thing parlays into the success, like I said, or lack thereof of a program, all that kind of, making sure the guys, eat good, make sure the food's there, making sure, if I can help in any way with our kind of travel or operations side of things, making sure we have all our appropriate equipment. I mean, all this stuff I know is going to bore your viewers to tears, but like this is the behind the scenes of college basketball. And so it taught me so many good habits. It really did. And you get to play an interesting role in that capacity because someone like myself, I knew when I got into it, I wanted to get on the coaching side of things, but I'm the same age as the players. So I'm kind of a liaison between the staff and the players in that sense. I get to be a guy they can kind of lean on both sides. And it kind of really, if I took care of what I needed to do in those capacities, I felt like I was able to maybe, kind of try to get the coaches to lend their ear to me if I maybe had an idea or a thought or a question in those kind of senses, because, one important thing is there is obviously a divided line. Like I am not on the coaching staff at that point in time, even if I thought I was. So it kind of really did make me kind of realize like, okay, like I need to really dominate in this role that I'm in order to get to the spot I am. I mean, it's kind of the same thing as you hear, just for the job you want, not the job you have. So that's how it was for me. I really wanted to make sure that if I want to continue climbing the coaching ladder, that I didn't give any coach or anybody affiliated with our program any reason to not vouch for me if I wanted to get into coaching. And I think that's something I did well. And I was very, very fortunate to parlay my managerial experience into a graduate assistantship at Northwestern, opportunity of a lifetime in many different ways, educationally, getting to go to the Big Ten, getting to work for Coach Collins, be around people that have been in the NBA, went on to be in the NBA, getting to experience Power 5 basketball was a dream come true. So that was one of those things. It was like at the time, maybe there were some long days while I'm folding towels or doing laundry where I was like, man, where's the light at the end of this tunnel? But, I just put my head down and kept working. And one thing that I want to mention too is I was very fortunate, as I said, to work along some other really good managers, and keeping those relationships at the time when we're 18 to 22-year-old college schmucks, and now some of these guys are, working in, on an AAU circuit, or they're coaching high school basketball, they're coaching college basketball, and, building those relationships at that time, kind of really did a lot for me. And I'm still friends with most of those guys, and relationships I'll have forever. So you hear all the time, this is a relationship business, and 100% is. And so, that's one thing I don't take for granted in my experience.
Hey, I see it. You're in the trenches with them. You're building the relationships from the ground up, and I can definitely see that, player development train of thought, the value players having that, even up to the NBA level with someone like Coach Jamal Mosley for the Magic, who worked for nearly 2 decades as a player development guy, and still they'll tweet out clips of him being in the practice, defending the guys, working on each individual move, stacking days that way. And you can tell the players appreciate just getting in the gym with it, and really seeing that you're willing to do the suicide sprints, or you're willing to, do the drills with them to help make them better. So I'm sure they appreciate it all the way down. And you mentioned a ton of names I'd like to know more about, but let's at least hear what was it like working with Kyle Korver?
So I never got to work with Kyle Korver. I got to work with Coach Greg Rensing at Middle Tennessee State, who worked with Kyle Korver at Creighton.
I see.
I've heard stories about how Kyle Korver used to shoot with the lights off to try to get his focus, and just getting to be around guys with some great, coaching experience, at all levels and stories. And, that's the one thing that I love about this business is it's such a small world. It's so tough to get in. It really is. I don't sugarcoat that at all. But once you're in, it's like a fraternity. You're in. I mean, everybody knows everybody, or you have a connection here or there. And it's really, really cool to know that. I just love basketball. So I try to be an encyclopedia about this stuff wherever I can. Coach Grensing was on staff, at Kansas State when they made a Final Four, and pretty cool experience there, getting to work for Dana Altman, who's obviously still doing this. Coach Davis, the head coach at MTSU at the time, he just got inducted into their Hall of Fame. He was the youngest head coach in Division I at one point in time at the University of Idaho. I could be incorrect about this, but I think he was something like 28 years old and a Division I head coach. I mean, I'm 26 going on 27 here in about 2 months. And that is surreal to me to think about that. Coach Wynn Case was one of our assistants there. His son, Jeremy, is an assistant at Kansas now. Coach Hamilton, I mean, what a career path for him. He was a football player at Duke and is now a basketball coach at Louisville. He's been at Ole Miss. He's been at LSU. I mean, such a cool path for him. So just getting to be around a lot of these guys was really cool. Like I said, to just kind of learn. One thing about that staff in particular at Middle Tennessee that I still take, with me wherever, was the attention to detail, how hard we played. It was just non-negotiable in every sense of the word. And I love that. I mean, practice atmospheres that people think I make up, where I say, like, you couldn't hear yourself think. The intensity, small details, like managers like myself were not making passes and reps because every player had to be engaged. And even if you're out, you're not just standing in a line zoned out, you're making the passes. So you better be alert. And kind of having this mentality of, like, we didn't care that we were at Middle Tennessee. We didn't care we were a mid-major or Conference USA. Like, we believed we could beat anybody on any given day. Coach Davis said it in his Hall of Fame induction speech not too long ago that we had the mentality, especially when they beat Michigan State, of shirts and skins. Like, you walk in LA Fitness, you don't think, man, there's no way we beat these guys. You walk in and you just hoop, and that was one thing. Is I like, if you work just as hard as everybody else, if you pay attention to the details as much as everybody else, put in the work, good things can happen for anybody. I mean, at the end of the day, like, everybody's human. You put in the time, you put in the effort, study the tape, whatever the case may be, have a good game plan from the coaching staff. And just watching their approach on a day-to-day basis was something I really respected, really learned from. Just like I said, really harping on little details, like those small things. Like, to me, there are no big things. Everything is just a small thing stacked on top of each other. And I thought that was something we did really, really well. We had leadership from throughout the locker room, like a real culture. I know that's such a buzzword these days, and in some ways I like it. Some ways I don't. What I don't like is when you slap culture on a shirt or on a wall and think that just means you have culture. Like, no, that was like I said, you walked into that practice, everybody's on the court 15 minutes before, lathered in sweat, working. Like, you do your work before practice. Like, you're a serious-minded individual, and if you weren't, you didn't stand a chance. Another thing that I really respected and still, try to take with me to this day was about habits. Habits was really everything. And, obviously all of us can look at a box score and evaluate a player, right? Well, that's usually coming from a game. Well, what dictates your playing time in a game or your performance in a game? Well, it's usually your practice habits and how you perform in practice, at least from a coach's perspective. One thing we did at Middle Tennessee with that staff that I still am I love to death, I don't know how else to describe it, was we literally charted habits from, do you get 50-50 balls? Are you the first guy to the floor on a loose ball? Are you the second guy in the air on a contested shot? Meaning, are you leaving your feet and just flying at everybody on a closeout and forcing us to scramble? Do you set screens that get teammates open, like a screen assist? Do you have high hands every time you close out on a shooter? And then the inverse, like, do you not take care of the ball? Are you not talking? Are you not getting back? Are you not in the right spot in your at the midline in a rotation? Like, little stuff like that was like, and that's literally how we dictated playing time. We called it points and breakdowns. You get points for positive stuff and breakdowns for negative stuff. And we had a running list, and that's how you dictated your playing time. And then obviously off the floor, behavioral, academics, stuff like that. I mean, so when I tell you every day you had to earn it, every single day it had to be earned. Your stock could go up or down based on your own individual performance every day. Not how many points you scored, not nothing like that. Not how you shot the three, Nothing like that. Like, were you competing? Were you doing what we asked of you? Were you disciplined? Were you detail-oriented? Were you unselfish? Were you like that kind of stuff? It's like, I just think that can kind of get lost in the shuffle sometimes. One of my favorite quotes is, "You are what you emphasize," when it comes to coaching. And so perfect example of that is, hey, these are these things we emphasize every single day in practice. If you're not about it, you ain't going to play. If you are about it, well, then it's in your control what you can control. And from there, I mean, the opportunities are endless. You get on the floor and show what you can do, but you've got to earn that every single day in practice. We did, it's all kind of coming back to me now. I mean, we did 2 days every day in the preseason, every single day, 2 a day, 6 a.m., and then back at, 2:30, 3, something like that. So, I mean, everybody in the country works. Don't get me wrong. They're all practicing. They're all in the gym or whatever. But, like, we had the mentality of no one's going to work harder than us. So these are things I still take with me. I mean, this is seriously 7-8 years ago now. So but it's still burned into my brain. And I'm so fortunate that as an 18, 19-year-old impressionable kid who knew nothing, that was my first kind of experience in college basketball. And it's like, I didn't know any other way after a certain point, and I'm very grateful for that opportunity.
Hey, you gotta have a tough program to, make March Madness, upset Michigan State as a 15 seed. That was back in 2016. And man, I don't know about the listeners, but I'm ready to run through a wall right now. Like this hustle culture. I like the NBA tracks some of that kind of stuff, like basically hustle stats, and like it's cool to see that y'all were doing it back then and even before, and just essentially like counting up winning plays, like guys that are showing hustle on both ends of the floor, showing effort that isn't always showing up in the traditional box score of points and rebounds, assists, steals, and blocks. So that's a great way to, incentivize the players, kind of build that team culture of hustle, grit, being tough. I mean, I get it. I can see how it works, inspires the guys. So I can see how that translates. And you kind of hit on some of this, but, based on your experience coaching at all these different levels, are there any fundamentals that you see that translate to every level? And clearly hustle is one of them.
Yeah. So trying to think of things in particular that apply here. Like I said, things that are in your control, whether it be effort, enthusiasm, energy, communication. Like one thing that Coach Davis did and had in our locker room at Middle Tennessee, it wasn't in a buzzword way. It was our terminology. We didn't just put culture on the wall. We didn't just put, hardest playing team on the wall. Like I can pull it up on my phone right now. I still have the picture on the wall of like our terminology. Like I'm telling you, like it was everything that our program was about was on that wall. And you needed to, be about all of that, whether it be, high hands or communication or, kind of the way we guarded, kind of butt to the ball and stuff like that. Like, just those small details, right? The competitiveness, like if you weren't tough, if you couldn't take tough coaching, and again, it was not just to yell at you. It was like, this is what we need from you. And if you're willing to match it or not, kind of dictated, the outcome from there. So what I've tried to instill for me is like, again, it doesn't matter the level of talent. It doesn't matter the level you're at. It's all about kind of the habits and the details. Like to me, the expression I like to use a lot is there are no levels. When I was a head coach at the prep school level a year ago, I used to tell our guys all the time, I'm going to coach you the same way I would coach guys in college. I'm taking drills that I would take from there, like toughness drills, whether it be, rebounding or things I'd emphasize. You got to get on loose balls. Stuff like that, like you kind of mentioned, winning plays. So I kind of think it can come down to what you emphasize. Obviously, it's a little bit of a different time. You can't get out there with the football pads and work on rebounding and stuff like that anymore, and that's okay for many reasons. But, I think in particular, in terms of fundamentals, I mean, it really comes down to that. It's the fundamentals. Like technique is obviously super important, but at the end of the day, it does come down to like kind of competitive spirit. There's I'm dropping a lot of quotes here. I just realized I am. But Steve Kerr said something a few years ago that I just absolutely loved. And he says, people play basketball how they live their life. And I thought about that. I was like, wow, that's really true. I don't think it really matters at all what kind of background you're from. You know what I mean? Like, it's just kind of who you are as a person. Are you inherently motivated? Are you a serious-minded individual? Like, is this something that's a hobby to you or a craft? This day and age more than ever. I don't need to tell you, college basketball, it's a job. Playing is a job. Like, this is not something you show up and do in your free time. Like, no, this is your life, from making sure you get up and go to class, making sure you're in the weight room, making sure you get extra shots, making sure you're at practice, making sure you're getting extra shots after practice. It's a full-time job. So if you're not serious about it, if you just show up kind of in the hours that you need to be there, you don't do anything outside of practice, guys are just going to separate themselves. You said it earlier about stacking days. I'm fortunate now at Flagler. We have so many great kids, but so many guys that, we know they're in the gym on their own. We know they watch film on their own. Technology is amazing these days. We can literally see who is and is not watching film. Like, we can go in and look at how many hours they've logged, watching film. Guys texting you, guys wanting to get in the film room with you, really taking this approach seriously. Again, there's plenty of people on this podcast that are like, what is Flagler? They don't Division II ball, but it's amazing. These guys don't take it any less serious. They don't at all. Obviously we don't take it any less serious. I'm so privileged to be here. It's an unbelievable place and a great conference, working with some really great coaches, smart basketball minds, and so that's what I mean when I say there's no levels to this. Like, if you're about this, like when we were at Middle Tennessee conference, we didn't care. We saw Minnesota or Michigan State, or when I was there, we beat Ole Miss, we beat Vanderbilt. Like obviously in the tournament, we beat Minnesota. It didn't matter that they were Power 5. It didn't matter they were SEC or what. Like, it really did not matter, because we knew the work we put in, we knew the time we put in, we knew the kind of the serious approach we had. And then those are just guys that were just tough dudes, like just tough guys. Like, they didn't get rattled in tough moments. They stuck together. They could tell each other the brutally honest truth, which I think that's something I try to pride myself on in life. I also just try to be myself, and I'm not a good sugarcoater. I'm not a good, BSer, maybe, as they say, but I'm all about like brutal in between the eyes honesty, especially when it comes to like, hey, we don't have time to waste here. We don't have time to lie and have time to just tell, oh no, it's okay. It ain't okay. It ain't like we need you to be tougher. We need more out of you. Like, this is an expectation I've set for you. And, one thing I tried to do, like I said last year, you're just asking, some examples, is, accountability to me is everything. From my boss holding me accountable, to me holding players accountable, him holding players accountable. When I was a head coach, I met with every single one of my players before the season, went through a list of questions, about their own expectations for themselves, what they want to do with basketball once they graduate, high school and the prep level. Like, what did they want basketball to do for them in their life? And so what that did was give me some ammo in a good way. Like, I could hold them accountable. Like, this is what you told me you want to do with this game. This is what you told me your expectation was for yourself. This is what you told me you thought you brought to the table. You're not about it, then, hey, this is what you told me. I'm going to hold you to that. And so I think that's really, really important, is to kind of be about what you say you're about. There's a lot of guys in this that say they want to be a pro. There's a lot of guys in this that say they want to be all conference, or they want to be this or that. Okay, well, do your actions match your words? And I think that's a big thing. And in terms of a team concept, like accountability is like, hey, like, it ain't personal. We're trying to win here. Like, I need you to do this. You need me to do that. Like, okay, great. Let's go out there and do it. Like, we're not in our feelings. We're not, taking it personal in a way that's going to get us down. Like, we understand, like, no, this is just what is expected of me. And I think that's what the great teams do. Coach Popovich always talks about it, brutal in between the eyes honesty and not sugarcoating, and, that kind of stuff I think is super important. And I think sometimes, like, I don't want to sound like I'm this day and age kind of guy by any means. I'm still pretty young and in this day and age. But, you know, like there are a lot of people in basketball that unfortunately are being paid to tell you what you want to hear. You know, and I'm not going to single anybody out in particular on that, but like there's a lot of outside noise these days that, you know, from social media or whatever the case may be. And, you know, I think one small thing, and I won't go on a whole tangent about that, and a billion people have talked about that are smarter than me. But one thing for me is I think it's really important to trust and be really locked in with the people that are in the room with you. If that makes sense. Like, you know, there's a lot of people on social media that tell you how great you are. Or there's a lot of people that were with you in high school that are like, man, your coach doesn't know what he's talking about. He's misusing you, man. Like you're this, that, and the other, you know, or you should be getting the ball or getting whatever. Like, what about the people that are spending every day with you? What about the people in your locker room? What about the people on the court with you that are really, you know, kind of going to battle with you? Like, I think it's really important not to lose sight of that, because those are the people that care about you at the end of the day. They really are. They're going to tell you the truth. They see what you do. They see what you're about. They see your habits. And if you get called out on that stuff, it's usually because they're calling you up. I'm just a quote guy now, but that's like a Monty Williams quote, right? Like call people up, not call people out. This is the standard. This is where we need you to be. These are the expectations we have for you. You know, you need to meet them. And unfortunately, there's a lot of outside noise now where people, you know, get kind of held accountable in that, and they go run and tell somebody else. And obviously there's context missing, and that's where things become problematic. So I think that's a really important thing for me, is kind of really just be locked in with the people that are doing it with you every day. People that are in the grind with you, people that are, you know, kind of going to war with you. Like, those are your brothers. That's what's amazing about basketball, the fraternal aspect that I was talking about earlier. So I think that's my one piece of advice, maybe, kind of on this current day and age of college basketball.
I'm feeling it. I mean, you've already hit on, you know, the type of identity, type of like style you like to really establish and practice, with hustle culture, with just fighting for the guy next to you in the trenches, to, you know, just being accountable is the word of the day here. So, you know, holding yourself to the same standard you expect your coaches and teammates to be held to, and just going to war with them. So to get a little into the nitty-gritty side of some of the coaching with maybe the game plan itself, are there any you know, actions or plays or sets that you really think are just easy money, winning basketball style of play that you try to implement whatever team you end up on? Like you voice that, you know, these are the actions that I think are just going to be easy buckets. And obviously it depends on the personnel, so maybe you adapt a little to the players you have. But is there just any specific plays that you love or would like to detail that you think are just good ideas to involve in the coach in the playbook?
Sure, absolutely. You know, I think the beauty of kind of where we are at in the world of basketball is there are guys that are having expanded games and skill sets, I would say, more than ever. Yes, maybe we've sacrificed some fundamentals here and there, but there's more guys than ever that can dribble, pass, and shoot. You know what I mean? There's more guys with size that can step out and shoot the three ball. I think there's more guards with kind of an inside game and, you know, quick burst, but also ability to kind of play around the rim. I mean, you know, everybody obviously talks about Jalen Brunson or, you know, kind of the Villanova guys that, you know, they're almost kind of positionless in many ways. They have a back to the basket game. They can step out and shoot it. Obviously, a lot of people talk about kind of what I think is referred to mostly as like a 0.5 mentality. Like, you got to catch the ball and either shoot it, drive it, or move it within about a half second. I think Steph Curry called it like a grenade. Like, if you hold that thing for too long, you're killing the offense. So I think that's a big thing too, is decision making. That's one thing we try to drill. Obviously, that's not a set play necessarily, not something you draw up on the whiteboard, but being able to read the game and make decisions is super, super important this day and age. You know, you're going to see a lot of different coverages. Obviously, scouting is better than ever, especially at our level. Everybody knows what you're going to do. You're playing somebody in your league. Maybe by the time you get to a conference tournament, you're seeing them for a third time, 30 games in. They know what you do. So, that's what separates the good from the great, right? Is like, especially like you watch in the NBA playoffs with how everybody switches with the game planning. Like you can't give Kevin Durant the same look defensively twice in a row. We can't double LeBron every single time from the same side. He's going to pick you apart. You can't guard Steph Curry the same way after every single action. They'll figure you out. So kind of at our level too, like we really try to drill decision making, being able to make quick decisions, being able to get to actions quickly. Draw 2 on the ball. Let's get off the ball, try to create advantage situations. Stuff like that is what we really kind of drill and rep every single day. And you get to do it from both sides. Obviously, you get to guard it, and then you get to go against it, right? So we do that a lot. Obviously, that's a big thing, and it's a mental thing as much as it is a physical thing. That comes back to watching film. That comes back to kind of really talking about and getting to the nitty gritty, as you said. So really talking about trying to make quick decisions, getting a lot of actions, being unselfish. And speaking of unselfishness, one thing we do a really good job with here at Flagler, I think, is teaching unselfish cutting. I think one thing that our head coach always says is that one of the most unselfish things you can do is make a cut for somebody else, a cut in which I'm not getting the ball. I'm doing this to hopefully open something up for somebody else. So we play a lot of heavy kind of Princeton style. So if we hit the ball in the high post, when we get to an action, sometimes you make a cut that the ball's not coming to me. We're trying to draw help, create somebody else for an opening. And then again, we big on trusting offense. This is not 6-year-old YMCA basketball where you chase the basketball like following the ball like that. Like you need to maintain space. Obviously, we live in the pace and space era. Maintain space, trust the offense. The ball will find you. Make an unselfish cut, get back out to space on the weak side. Trust that we'll make we'll drive, we'll make a one more pass, maybe another one more after it for an open shot. Keep the defense in rotation, keep them scrambling. So that's one thing I think is really key. Like kind of advantage basketball is kind of the new wave of basketball right now. Obviously, there's still great players that can isolate and go kind of one-on-one, but especially in the NBA, obviously, without defensive 3 seconds or with defensive 3 seconds, excuse me. Like you've got it, the ball doesn't stick. You watch an NBA game these days, the ball doesn't stick. They draw 2, make an extra pass, drive a closeout. They see help. They kick it out again. They have shooters everywhere, guys that are really smart. And they understand that, like I said earlier, if they're not bought into what they're trying to do and they deviate, they want to go do their own thing and get in their proverbial bag, one of my least favorite expressions, they ain't going to last long. They ain't going to play much. I've been very fortunate already. It's October 29th, and I've been to 2 NBA games this year already. Saw a preseason game in Atlanta between the Hawks and the Pacers, 2 elite offensive teams. Really big on shooting, movement. They have some elite passing point guards, obviously, but they've got guys all over the floor that are just trying to make the right play. And that's what it's all about. Like that's what those coaches at that level want to see. Obviously, I'm not one of them. I'm not trying to put words in their mouth. But you watch it, the ball just doesn't stick. It's beautiful. I love it. Like I said, you get 2 on the ball, you hit a guy in the short roll, they see help, spray it out somewhere. If they get if they get closed out on, they drive it, send the defense into rotation and they're scrambling and they always get good shots. It's amazing how it always seems that they get good shots. And what that looks like for every team is different. The other NBA game I went to was the Magic versus the Nets last Friday. The way they play offense versus Indiana is way different. Indiana's going to beat you to 140. The Magic are trying to get Paolo aside to himself or trying to get maybe an inverted ball screen for Franz Wagner or get a lot of cutting involved with some of their other guys like Suggs or Isaac or Gary Harris or some of these guys. Brooklyn is obviously in a different spot right now. They're in a little bit of a rebuilding mode, but they're young guys that are trying to stay in the NBA, that are trying to latch on. The game, I just, I love watching this stuff. I was looking at the Nets roster before I went. I saw Jalen Wilson was on their team from Kansas when they made the national championship. I'll be honest, I didn't even realize he was on their team. He had like 16 points, I think, in their season debut. cliche, sure, a little coach speak right here, but he's a winning player. He's won a national championship. He wasn't a high draft pick necessarily. He's found a way to stick on, and obviously, I'm sure he's looking to earn, a second contract. So he's obviously in a system where he's got opportunity to play, and he's going to make the most of it. Guys like watching a Dorian Finney-Smith or a Dennis Schroeder or some of these guys that are on their team, like, yeah, they can put up some numbers on a team like this, but, they're potentially either trying to earn themselves another contract or a bigger contract, or to be an appealing piece for a contender to trade for, down the road. So I think those situations are unique. Like they just because they may not have high expectations or high ceiling necessarily on their season, they're not going out there and phoning it in. Guys are fighting for a spot. I saw Zaire Williams out there from Stanford that used to be on the Grizzlies. To be honest, didn't know he's on their team. Had a nice little game. Like, he's still out there trying to, I want to latch on in the NBA, man. I want to play. Ben Simmons, God bless him. Everybody, they got their own thoughts on Ben Simmons. He's out there. He's playing the 5. He's reinventing himself, trying to find a way to latch on in the league and show that he can still provide value. And then I'll flip to the coaching side. You already mentioned Coach Mosley. From everything I heard about him, fantastic guy. Our staff knows him well. Player development background. He's done an awesome job of developing some of these young players. He really has. He's been handed so many young draft picks and is getting so much out of them. And then you see Jordi Fernandez coaching the Nets. Obviously, unbelievable experience for him getting to coach, Team Canada in the Olympics. I'm sure that was amazing. Getting to learn under Coach Mike Brown in Sacramento. He's, fighting for himself to, his first NBA job. I'm sure he has no intention of losing that. And he was out there. I saw him. I mean, I think he may have gotten teed up in the game. If I'm wrong, Coach Fernandez, don't be mad at me. But he's fighting for his guys. He's showing them, like, I don't care what expectations we have on our season. Like, that doesn't mean we take this any less seriously. We approach it. We're competitive. We're human. We want to win. And I just love that kind of stuff. I was very fortunate to be in the Big Ten at the same time as Juwan Howard, who was on the Nets bench coaching against 3 guys. He coached there. I had the tough task of having the Michigan scout when I was at Northwestern. They had Franz at the time. Not an easy coverage at all. Mm-hmm. They obviously he's coaching against his son, Judd Howard. Caleb Houston was on our scout at the time. Like, what a cool experience, and just kind of talking about how small world, basketball is. And, those guys are fighting for NBA spots right there. Obviously, Franz has turned into an amazing NBA player. Jet's trying to latch on, between, the G League and the NBA. And Caleb Houston, like, he was a problem at Michigan. I mean, could hit the 3 ball, could really guard. So just small things like that. I hope I'm kind of answering your question here in some ways, but I think there's beauty of basketball. And again, this may have nothing to do with what your initial question was, but, like, you're never through learning. Like, I go to an NBA game and I'm still a kid in a candy store. Like, what can I learn from these guys? What actions are they running that will eventually, kind of trickle down to our level? I think that's a really cool aspect of basketball. They're so advanced. They're so smart at that level. They know what they're doing. They've had a whole off season to kind of concoct some new ideas and strategies. And, that's the cool part of the early NBA season is you're seeing a lot of these new strategies kind of deployed. So I love going to that. I saw the Pacers run a play that we run at Flagler. I shot the assistant coach a text right away. I'm like, hey, they're running this. We don't have Ben Mathurin, but still, it's cool to see them out there doing it and using the same kind of concepts and details, small stuff like that. We try to steal and bring down to our level. So they say all the time that coaching, half of it is just stealing stuff from other people. And, that's the beauty of it is you're never through learning. You really aren't. And so I almost dropped a John Wooden quote on there, but I feel like that'd be disrespectful if I started talking about John Wooden. So, but he does
have enough quotes here.
He does say that, when you're through learning, you're through. So I agree with that wholeheartedly. Like, that's the beauty of basketballs. I don't feel like anybody has ever solved it,
Hey, there it is. I mean, welcome. You're on the right podcast. We're here learning basketball.
Absolutely.
It's a never-ending journey, and yeah, I was gonna follow up and kind of dig into what kind of concepts you might have have picked up by watching some of these games. And just to hit on some of what you were talking about, I caught that Magic Nets game too. That's cool. You were able to see it live. I mean, the Wagner bros just wreaking havoc out there. Franz drops 29. Ant Black continues to show some facilitation. He could be, a point guard of the future for this team. And Wendell, something of an unsung hero, might not show up in the box score, but he really, Coach Mosley calls him like the identity of the team in one player. Like he's playing hard every play. He's setting the strong screens, hitting the boards, good pick and roll chemistry with Franz, and he's finally healthy. He had a tough year last year with injuries as well. And yeah, I mean, you hit on a ton of fun teams out there. The Nets, we'll see what they end up doing, but it is cool to have the perspective of like they're gathering some young talent. They're going to see who sticks to the league, who they might want to build around long term. They didn't have much luck in this game, but they definitely have a lot of, different pieces that could fit on winning teams, from Schroeder running point to Cam Johnson's, in the front court, to Nick Claxton, just a really strong defensive anchor. Maybe we see a Daniel Gafford type move for Claxton this year, where he ends up as a play finisher, defensive anchor in the right situation, getting to play off of more of a creator, and then almost a totally different mindset in Hawks Pacers, where we're just running up the score almost in this one, but some really elite like point guard creation. And to back it up a little even more, like I love the 0.5 decision making is definitely just a modern theme, and almost more so than memorizing a certain play that we have to run every time. Like just being able, from Steph talking about it as a grenade to, I want to say Popovich might have came up with the term originally, or somewhere along the line with those 2010 Spurs teams, where you dribble, pass, and shoot. You should almost know before you even get the ball what you're planning to do with it, because if you waste that 0.5 seconds making a decision, it might already be too late. You might lose that advantage that's already been created. So it's nice to see that that's kind of trickled down to every level, and that we're just seeing modern spacing, modern advantage creation basketball played across the board. So while we're on the topic of the NBA, are there any concepts or plays that you've seen recently, or that just anything from the league that you try to borrow or steal, as you say, that think applies to just about any level that you're able to implement with your teams?
Sure. I think that question is kind of twofold, in the sense of like, yes, I'll get to the plays and the kind of the concepts, like, stuff that's kind of drawn up or strategized to, but I'll also get to like a little bit more meticulous. Couple examples, like you mentioned a guy like Nick Claxton. Like, they're not throwing him the ball in the post and kind of telling him to go to work. And that's not an insult by any means. Like, he's really good in dribble handoffs. He's a really good screener. He's going to give you second chances on the offensive glass. And as you kind of alluded to, that's going to be attractive to a team trying to win a title here in a couple months. Now, whether he gets moved or not is fine, but you mentioned Daniel Gafford. Like, that was the appeal. He could go out to Washington and phone it in last year and be like, I don't want to be here. I don't care, or whatever. You're always vying for a spot, whether you know it or not. And it's those kind of small things, like in the NBA, like you, especially if you're trying to like make a name for yourself. And two things I was going to say, like in terms of stealing. Two things we can't do is we can't steal the shot making ability of the guys at that level. We're just not going to be able to. I was watching that Pacers game, and Siakam was doing stuff like, man, oh man, I can't teach that. And two is kind of the intelligence of these guys. I mean, you mentioned the 2010 Spurs, and I mean, it was amazing. All those guys, seemed to just have such high IQ and role players that, maybe that team was kind of greater than the sum of its parts. You mentioned, I was at that Hawks game, and, they're coached by Quin Snyder now. I'm pretty sure they called it the blender when he was with the Jazz, kind of their offensive system, like just all about advantage basketball. I think Kenny Atkinson was talking about that with being in Cleveland now, like just advantage basketball, trying to create advantages, 2 on the ball. Let's swing. Let's keep our spacing, force defenses into long closeouts. So is that necessarily something you're drawing up on a board? maybe not necessarily, maybe an initial action to kind of create an advantage. And after that, it's high IQ players making high IQ plays in small amounts of time. Obviously, 24-second shot clock, 14 on a reset. You don't have a lot of time to mess around at that level. They cut with speed. The pace is really good. So kind of small stuff like that. Obviously I just said you can't steal their shot making or whatever. So, of course, I'm about to name drop maybe the GOAT, but with LeBron. One thing I always loved about LeBron, every pass he throws is perfectly on time and on target. He's throwing a Randy Johnson fastball to you right in your pocket. Always. Like I'm sure plenty of people notice that stuff, but it's not about him hitting the fadeaways or the deep threes or, the high flying dunks. Like, it's little stuff like that. It's just unbelievable to me. The processing speed at which he kind of makes decisions is remarkable. And then in terms of action specifically, obviously a lot of teams kind of in the NBA, like they say it all the time, it's a copycat league. I think you could probably turn on, I don't know, I'll give a rough estimate, 25 of the NBA teams probably run similar sets. Nowadays, a lot of it's 5 out. A lot of teams are getting to like wide kind of pin downs or kind of screen aways. And, the Celtics, I just got through saying that you can't figure basketball out, but they're close to figuring offense out, I think. The way they play 5 out, everybody on that team, they don't care who scores. When you watch them play, it doesn't matter. I think that has a lot to do with why, guys like Peyton Pritchard are having so much success. You get a guy like Sam Hauser into your system. I think he was undrafted. Out of Marquette, he comes in and he's thriving. Or Luke Cornett. We played Luke Cornett when he was at Vanderbilt, when I was at Middle Tennessee State. I still remember it. And Nemus Keita, and it's just funny is like they get guys to buy into their system, get guys to buy into unselfish plays. Even their superstars are unselfish. Jaylen Brown, Jason Tatum, these guys are making the right play. And then they have the best role players you could possibly have in a Drew Holiday. It's disrespectful to call him a role player, but I think you understand my point. Or a Derek White, former D2 walk-on. I'm sure not breaking any news to anybody on that one. But like guys that have just they're so unselfish. They make the right plays. They're always on winning teams. And to me, there's no coincidence there. And I'm incredibly biased on this next guy, but Al Horford. I grew up watching Al Horford in Atlanta. I've loved him to death forever. Talk about a guy that obviously is an unselfish player and a winner, NBA title and 2 college titles, but talk about a guy that has just continued to expand his game. When he stepped into the NBA, he was making, some elbow jumpers or baseline middies or whatever, back to the basket. Now he's a corner 3 specialist. He's an elite passer, unbelievable dribble handoff guy. Still seems to be the kryptonite for how many NBA star wings and bigs defensively. He can push the pace in transition. He can bring the ball up himself. Like, it's just amazing to watch that. One thing in particular, watching the Celtics, is these kind of 5-out actions I've talked about. A lot of times they call it delay, or they call it wide, or whatever the terminology is. They kind of swing it through the trailer, who's usually a big, who kind of reverse the ball, maybe a single screen away, maybe a stagger. Maybe they come off the stagger or the pin down. They either look for a shot. If they don't have it, they get a rescreen for a ball screen with the floor spread. Look to get downhill, look to get 2 on the ball, hit him in the pocket on a short roll, make a 4-on-3 play. Sometimes they catch it at the top and they'll flip it back to the guy that they got it from. Will rescreen, kind of just get some movement, force the defense to rotate a little bit. One thing watching the Celtics is they've actually started moving Horford or the 5, whoever it is, to the wing, kind of off ball, taking a rim protector or like kind of an elite 5 away from the action. They played, Milwaukee last night. Brooke Lopez now kind of off the ball instead of kind of involved in the action as an elite ball screen kind of big defender. And it's a kind of interesting. It forces a lot of switching if everybody's kind of, around the same position as a wing. It's kind of interesting. It's like kind of to the point of everybody can kind of dribble, pass, and shoot, I think is really interesting. One guy I think everybody's already fallen in love with as a coach is J.J. Redick out in L.A. He seems to have, already kind of adopted a lot of modern concepts out there. I mean, even ironically, even kind of stealing some stuff from the college level. Obviously everybody at kind of our level kind of looks up to the UConns of the world right now. Alabama, kind of looking at these teams as, really kind of high octane offenses that push the pace, make quick decisions, a lot of movement, create advantages. I think he stole his first play as a Laker coach from Dan Hurley. Maybe as an ode to him, or it's also just a great action. You're seeing that a lot now. They're kind of putting bigs maybe in a weak side corner to where their man is at the rim kind of in help. And then what they'll do is they'll skip it across the court. They'll have a guy immediately fly off a handoff from it because the big will be out of position. If he gives him a good handoff and sets a good screen, that guy's kind of getting pancaked by his screen. He's coming off with daylight to shoot. If the big somehow kind of realizes, oh, crap, I'm way out of position and flies out to rotate, usually they're flying at him. You can kind of hit the big on a slip maybe there. You're seeing a lot of that kind of stuff where a lot of decoys, a lot of false actions maybe. I think obviously everybody remembers kind of the Warriors pioneering kind of the split actions. Maybe this is just the coaching brain looking at it, but everybody obviously knows it's pretty hard to guard when you got Steph Curry and Klay Thompson flying off pin downs and screens and whatnot. But then it goes even deeper for me. If you've watched a game of theirs in the last 10 years, who's usually throwing that post feed? It's Kevon Looney. Why? Is it because Kevon Looney is some elite passer? Not necessarily, because his man is sitting in the paint in drop coverage. So he feeds them and goes sets the screen away for the guy in the split action. They're coming off with daylight to shoot the ball. And then what happens? It's, oh, crap, it's Steph Curry. 2 jump at him. They hit the guy on the slip. They've done it for years. 10 years now they've been doing it. They still can't guard it. Teams are starting to get better at that. That was probably kind of one of the main kind of actions kind of implemented maybe like 10 years ago. Maybe like, the last 7 years or so has kind of been the Spain pick and roll. You've seen a lot of that, and there's still plenty of it. Now you're kind of seeing more of the 5-out kind of wide actions. You're seeing across pretty much every team has some form of it. Staggers. You're seeing just stuff to kind of keep the floor spread. Obviously, you still see kind of your traditional horns looks a lot of the time. Ime Udoka must have been watching me coach. I'm just kidding. He wasn't watching. Last year, I literally watched he ran a play out of a timeout the other day that I ran first play of every game last year when I was a prep head coach just to see if anybody did any scouting. Elementary set. It's just, hey, do you know how to guard it or not? It's kind of funny to see an NBA team doing stuff like that. Small, one more example. I know I'm rambling here about it, but it was pretty interesting. The Grizzlies, I think Taylor Jenkins is a super smart coach. Been a fan of his for a long time. He was an assistant for the Hawks, when they won 60 games. That would have been, almost 10 years ago now under Coach Budenholzer, who ended up developing about 4 or 5 head coaches on that staff. He hired a couple guys to come into his staff that have been really kind of studying modern offense. A guy named Noah LaRoche, who has no idea I exist, but I'm a huge fan of his work. I've been following him along for years. Out in California, he's been kind of, working with some NBA players. He's one of these guys that's got 8 people in his workouts, and, they're sending 2 at a guy. He's got to get off the ball quick. He's got to cut and get to an open space before he gets the ball back, kind of stuff like that. They brought him in from more of a workout guy. He's kind of like, kind of pioneering their more modern offensive vision now. One of the guys that was working with Noah LaRoche is a guy named Joe Boylan, who was with the Timberwolves most recently on their bench as an assistant. He's with Memphis now. I think they're good friends. They've really got a modern offensive kind of approach, and they're stealing that at the NBA level. Kind of just how to make, again, it's not so much about scripted plays. It's more about decision-making, advantage basketball, trying to create a 2-on-1, a 3-on-2, a 4-on-3, whatever that case may be. And then again, too, like the one thing the NBA does so well is expand guys' games. Unfortunately, I used to have to go against Zach Edey at the college level on the other bench. That wasn't fun. It's amazing to see he was just obviously unguardable in the post back in the college days. He's already hitting NBA threes. And it's just amazing to see kind of the development. They have plans for these guys. They know what their strengths are. They kind of double down on their strengths while also kind of refining their weaknesses. So it's cool for me to see that. And then obviously I love watching Oklahoma City. And it's not just because their head coach is a former manager, I promise. I love watching. What they do is they just drive you all game long. They drive you, and you can't stand in front of Shea. You can't stand in front of Jalen Williams. You can't stay in front of some of these guys. I was watching one of their preseason games before Isaiah Hartenstein got hurt, which I thought was a fantastic pickup for them. Kind of like I was talking about Claxton. The guy latched on in the NBA because he can get to a dribble handoff, because he can short roll and make a 4-on-3 play, because he can screen and roll with speed and finish around the rim, because he can guard in a ball screen. Not the sexy stuff, but they'll pay you $60 million to do it. They will. I'm not going to go down a rabbit hole in this story, but a guy I used to cite, I'll get back to the Thunder in just a second. A guy I used to cite as an example that actually I think was on the Thunder last year was Bismack Biyombo. Bismack Biyombo has played over a decade in the NBA. He averages for his career 3 shots per game. That's it. If I told you you're allowed to shoot 3 times a game for your NBA career, but I'll pay you $90 million to do it, will you?
Cashing in.
He's made $90 million in his NBA career to screen, to roll, to rebound, to get to a dribble handoff. And when they throw him the ball back, he ain't going to work. He's looking for the next guy to get the ball to in an action. There's a reason teams try to have him. He's bounced around from Phoenix to Oklahoma City to some of these. Like they want a guy like that on their team that they know like he'll do the unselfish stuff. I mentioned Kevon Looney earlier. Warriors ain't letting that guy go. And if you know basketball at all, go watch Kevon Looney in high school. He looks like Olajuwon. Go watch him at UCLA. He's a stud. In the NBA, he gets the ball. He's like, where's Steph? Let me go get this to him. Let me go get his rebound and then kick it back out to him. Like, those guys always last, and I love that. Going back to the Thunder, what I mentioned with Hartenstein, they were doing everybody knows kind of the zoom actions now. That's another one of those actions that's been really popular the last 5-6 years or so. You down screen and do a dribble handoff. They were doing like a triple zoom with like 2 down screens and a dribble handoff from Hartenstein handing it off 7 feet to Chet Holmgren 7 feet coming off a handoff on the perimeter. I'm like, well, if this isn't modern basketball, I don't know what is. It's just amazing to kind of see this. Obviously, I mean, Wemby's a freak of nature down in San Antonio, but they're running him off ball screens. They're running him off pin downs. And I'm like, it's just amazing to see how versatile these guys are now, how the skill sets have expanded so much, how they don't, I think the NBA does a good job of not telling guys what they are, but kind of, I don't know how to phrase it, more so reacting to what they can do. It's just kind of cool. Like, they don't just, hey, you're 7 feet tall, back to the back, go to the block, go down there. Like, no, like, we're going to teach you how to handle the ball. Just one more point. I should have mentioned this earlier, going back to my Middle Tennessee days with Coach Kermit Davis. One thing I loved that we did, and this, I probably should have used this earlier in your question. All of our bigs did the perimeter player workouts. So when we did something in our practice, what we would call like guard big breakdown, you go guards kind of on one side, perimeter players, bigger guys kind of on the other side. Our bigs are doing the same stuff. And I thought that was so unique. I didn't even realize it was so unique at the time. But looking at it now, it's like we weren't pigeonholing anybody. We weren't saying this is all you're capable of doing. There's a reason Coach Davis had 4 men that were elite at handling the ball and getting to actions and stepping out and knocking down a jumper or driving a closeout or being able to guard on the perimeter, being able to rim protect, just being versatile, kind of Swiss Army knife kind of guys. They didn't have they may not be amazing at everything, but they didn't have weaknesses in those areas. So I think that's a really cool thing is, in draft evaluations, they talk about all the time, oh, look at this guy, look at Donovan Clingan out there shooting threes. You don't think these guys work on threes every day? They're all working on those. They're all shooting them. They're all getting them up. Some guys are better at than the others, but like they don't tell you what you can't do. That's what I like, is they're more focused on like, hey, let's get really good at what you're good at, but let's also kind of like refine some of these other areas. If they told Al Horford he couldn't leave the post, he would have never turned into an elite corner three specialist. I mean, it's still amazing for me to watch it, but it's the case. I mean, I remember a few years ago, one of his teammates, Porzingis, when he was still in Dallas, he's what, 7'3"? Rick Carlisle said, we're not throwing him the ball in the post. Like, we're just not. It's a low efficiency shot back to the basket post ups, and he just wasn't that good at it at the time. Now, he has gotten better at it, but now it's amazing. You watch him, he's shooting threes from the logo and really good at it. Now, 10 years ago, you're like, that's too deep. You can't shoot from there. That kind of thing. So I just think that's what's really cool about the level is like they are trying stuff now that you would have thought maybe they were crazy for doing it years ago. Obviously kind of one of the big things going back in Golden State, kind of their evolution was, again, it wasn't rocket science. Like, hey, we have two like elite shooters. Maybe they should go for more than 3 or 4 threes a game, substitute a few David Lee post-ups for maybe 10 Steph threes a game. Is that revolutionary? Sure. You could also argue maybe that's just math. I don't know. Like I just think like it's pretty interesting to watch that kind of stuff. And obviously there's a lot more nuance to it. I'm not trying to oversimplify it, but I just think it's kind of really cool where the game has gone. I love watching it. I really do. Like even the teams that aren't, necessarily having that much success on the court in terms of the wins and loss column, they're trying stuff, like they're experimenting. They have good players, they have talent, the coaches, they have a lot of ingenuity. They're sharp basketball minds. A lot of those jobs, like you think about like, a Charles Lee in Charlotte, he's coming from winning programs in both Milwaukee and Boston. Like you're trying to bring some of that, culture, but also teaching points and, winning pedigree. You're kind of trying to bring that to these teams and instill that. And one small last thing, I'd be remiss if I didn't get in there. This has absolutely nothing to do with on-court necessarily X's and O's, is I do think the NBA is tilting back a little bit, maybe not all the way, but a little bit to like valuing a veteran presence in the locker room. And I know that's maybe cliche. I know that's maybe like an old head thing to say. I know people used to joke all the time, why is Udonis Haslem still on the Heat? Right? Hey, when you get into coaching, like you're not in practice every day. You're not in reps every day. You've also crossed that proverbial divided line between being in the locker room and being on the coaching staff. Like things just kind of change there. Like there's a reason they always want to have that guy around. I have a hard time questioning, Pat Riley or Eric Spoelstra in that regard. I think it's cool when you see a team like Charlotte, like, yeah, we'll spend $1 million on Taj Gibson. He'll help us. We'll get our money back. These guys will grow, with having him on the team. The Rockets, they got Steven Adams now. Guy's been around forever. Guy who's a beloved teammate. Like you want guys like that, The Hawks, they got Larry Nance. Larry Nance Jr. I've been very fortunate to meet him. I coached his younger brother, Pete, at Northwestern. Unbelievable guy, great family. Like he's just about the right stuff. He's an unselfish player, kind of a Swiss Army knife kind of dude. Like you want guys like that around mentoring a Jalen Johnson, you want guys like that around mentoring an Onyeka Okongwu or a Risa Shea. You want these guys around dudes like that. There was a reason until he just retired, Ish Smith was on a roster every single year. There's plenty of guys. You hear it all the time. There's plenty of guys that can go get you a bucket. There's guys all over the world that can go get you 15, but like, are you a good teammate? Are you a veteran leader? Are you about the right stuff? Are your off-court habits good? Are you, Jeff Green? Like everybody, they call him Uncle Jeff for a reason. Guy was a Sonic, still around. They love him. He connects with the young players. DeAndre Jordan still out there with Denver. And I could go on, but like, I like the fact that the NBA is still kind of prioritizing, or maybe going back to even prioritizing, kind of having vets in the locker room, guys that have been around, guys that have seen it all, that kind of can deal with the ups and downs of a season. They got Chris Paul in San Antonio now. I mean, like, who would have thought it? But it's just cool to see, like, yeah, we want this guy in here mentoring our young guys. We do, because by the time they hit their stride, they're going to see what that competitive nature looks like. They're going to see what that basketball IQ looks like. So I just think that stuff's pretty cool.
Absolutely. We've come a long way from, just more modern 5-out basketball. The bigs got guard skills. Some of the guards got big skills. Two-way versatility is the name of the game. And on that point about veterans, I mean, that was something I noticed, and I think I just spoke with Ez about something similar, where with the Magic at least, like Jeff Weltman brought in some veteran presence to the locker room that hadn't quite been around. Like the end of the bench was a lot more unknowns during the previous regime, and they just brought in names like Aaron Aflalo and Mo Spates, and just kind of bring back some credibility to signing in Orlando in the first place, and everything else you mentioned, just having a veteran presence who can kind of set the tone, show what it's like to like actually show up and do the work every day, and what the expectations are for an NBA rotation player.
Yep.
But you hit on a ton of great stuff with different actions around the league. Super excited and interested in the way you explained all of them. Almost too many to jump in. My brain is
slightly.
I'm
talking too much. That's fine. I get down a rabbit hole.
Hey, no, this is that's what the podcast is for. To sit back and just learn some basketball and enjoy it, and try to get on the excitement level you're at. As a Magic fan, I'm stuck on the Biyombo contract a little bit, because 70 million of that 90 million was back in 2016 from Orlando.
That right time.
Right, that Raptors. And like, he earned it. That Raptors playoff run that he had was just incredible. Just shot blocking everywhere, incredible rebounder, rim roller, and he's made a whole career out of that role. And cashing in at the right time to do it with Orlando's bigs. I think they even signed Uncle Jeff Green to 15 million for good measure that year too. And he's cashed in a few of those 1 years, especially after winning it all with Denver in a nice role, because he just brings, like you said, veteran presence, a little bit of two-way versatility, some big wing defense and three-point shot making, and just, a guy everyone wants on the team. And it is nice to not see, like, even as the age of the average roster goes down, it's nice to still see some long tenured vets on these rosters, just to kind of balance things out, show the young guys the way, and really kind of help steer the ship for that development. Yep. And just the night-to-night expectations. So shifting gears a little bit, for kind of one last thing I want to ask you about is some of the prospects and players you've gotten to coach over the years. I had the opportunity to catch your game for DME Academy against Mount Verde. We got to see Moustapha Thiam, now at UCF, 7'2" center this season, potential 2025 NBA draft pick. He just reclassified a year earlier. He was already kind of like I want to say like top 5 for his position, top 20, top 30 overall, touted prospect. And he really impressed for a lot of reasons: defensive impact, great length, rim protection instincts, could play finisher, some nice soft touch hook shots, and finishing around the rim, and just some good two-way feel. So more on top of his game, what stands out to you about Thiam as a person? Like, what was he like just in the locker room and in the everyday practice life?
Yeah, Moustapha's a great kid, unbelievable kid. From Senegal. I can't imagine what it's like. I say this all the time. I can't imagine what it's like to be his age. When he was 16, 17, coming all the way across the world here to chase a basketball dream, barely speaking the language, doesn't know anybody. Like, I could have never done that there's no way. So it's just, first of all, just utmost respect there. Obviously, you're going to go through some hardships and adversity in that process, but just, the fact he's willing to do it obviously says a lot about who he is. Kid's a worker. I mean, he really is. And, he's got, God-given ability and stuff you can't teach, no doubt about it. But, season ended this year. He knew he was going to UCF or whatever. He's not sitting here just, kicking it until he gets to campus. Like, he's in the weight room. He's working on his game. He's still trying to get better. Even still playing AAU in some aspects. Like, some of that was really cool. Obviously, like you mentioned, he has unbelievable length, 7'2" with touch. Talk about like a modern player. I mean, he can dribble, pass, and shoot at 7'2". Rim protect, guard the perimeter, has feathery touch, can step out and shoot it, can get to a dribble handoff, can attack, off the bounce himself. And he's around the right people too. He really is. So that part of it's really cool. He's a great kid, coachable, respectful, just about the right stuff. And so that's why I have no doubt that he'll make it. I mean, like, I kind of to the point I was just making though, it's just, he is part of the basketball revolution of guys like this now. I mean, I saw some clips from him. I think they had a scrimmage recently, and it was impressive to just watch, the way he can step out and shoot the ball, the way he can protect the rim, the way he can rebound, the way he can, play above the rim, but also like just showcase a perimeter game when he's not around the basket. Continue, not just him. Like, I got to be around Savo Drezgic, who's at University of Georgia now, Serbian kid, unbelievable talent, was killing FIBA over there. I mean, was lighting everybody up and catching a lot of attention. It is interesting. Obviously, the NBA has become such an international game, not just in terms of talent, but style of play. Again, I kind of hinted earlier, I didn't want to get on this tangent about, basketball culture and, back in my day or anything like that. But like, you do notice a sizable gap in style of play from kids that do come from, whether it be Europe or overseas, to like kids that grow up in AAU culture. You just do, for many reasons. AAU culture, we don't practice a ton. It's kind of about making sure you get your numbers, making sure you showcase, hey, here's what I can do with the ball. Over there, some of these guys are in academies from the time they're a single-digit age. That was like a big thing with Luka, right? Like, he's playing pro ball at, 13? Maybe I'm wrong, 13, 14 years old. Like, right. Wins MVP in the second best league in the world at 17. Like, I mean, these guys are all of it. It's about development, fundamentals, getting better, challenge themselves against older competition. We got guys that play down in AAU these days over here. You know what I mean? Like, it's hard to believe, but it's all about, they come over here with a high IQ of the game. They know how to play the game. That's one thing that they really do. You hear it all the time. It's like, they know how to play. Over here, a lot of times it is about plays and X's and O's, and there's X's and O's at every level, don't get me wrong. But those guys come over here knowing how to play. And that's the most impressive thing about it, is like, they see stuff, they have court vision, they moves, footwork, that you're like, man, I didn't even consider that before. You know what I mean? Like, I think that's kind of really cool in many ways. And, I really enjoy watching that kind of stuff, and really enjoy kind of seeing that kind of, it's flair. Don't get me wrong. Like, they look like they're having fun and almost, I don't want to say showboating, but, like showing off a little bit, like, but in reality, it's effective. It's rooted. I mean, the amount of times I saw Savo see a hard hedge on a ball screen, guy slips and he hits him behind the back. It's like, yeah, he's showing a little flair, but it's, hey, I can't throw it over the top. I can't thread the needle. I can't wrap it around him. This works. Or I watch Savo drive the baseline and show the ball with two hands. Everybody flies, but he knows how many steps he's allowed to take. Shows it, takes another step, and finishes on the other side of the rim. I'm like, is that legal? I'm looking around, and they're like, yeah. And I'm like, wow, I never even considered that before. And, like, again, getting back to Moustapha a little bit, like, his ability to have so much talent but play within himself was always impressive to me. Like, his numbers, I don't know what they were off the top of my head, to be honest with you, were probably not just like, out of this world when he was at DME. but he impacted the game in so many ways on the offensive glass, protecting the rim on the defensive end, getting to actions quickly, being able to hit him in the high post and kind of cut off of him, letting him go to work in a face-up, letting him go to work back to the basket, pick and pop, pick and roll. Like, just versatility was one thing I kind of think of when I think of him. And that's kind of a scary thought of an 18-year-old kid, 19-year-old kid, versatility at 7'2". So, I mean, it's just amazing kind of where basketball is going, and you're seeing it kind of all over the place. I mean, international draft picks and teams going overseas, scouting, putting a huge emphasis on that. I'm sure there's going to be a guy in the NBA draft in a year that you've never heard of that's going to be in the top 5 or top 7 because, they learned so much about him, and they, kind of the people he's been around, the developmental processes he's been going through. Again, I try not to get too caught up in the stuff you can't teach, for instance, but talking to Moustapha, I do remember talking to him a little bit about Wemby. Not about the skill set, because he got stuff you'll never be able to teach and just God-given ability, just like Moustapha. But one thing that you used to see a lot about with Wemby, and obviously it's still going on, is the way he takes care of his body. A very unique body, a very unique frame. Obviously, you want to put on muscle and you want to put on weight, and he will over time. But his flexibility is unbelievable. I mean, he was out there looking like a guy in an inflatable guy at a car wash. You know what I mean? He just being able to have the mobility and the fluidity he does at his size, being able to stay healthy. Seeing a lot of his workouts, it's just amazing to see kind of what he does in order to kind of take care of his body. With Moustapha, it's kind of be the same thing. You get to a college weight room, you're going to put on 10, 15 pounds of muscle. You're going to be able to use strength to your advantage at the same time. But how do I make sure I don't bulk up too much? How do I make sure I'm eating right? How do I make sure I'm sleeping right? How do I make sure I'm, hydrating enough? Putting the right, obviously everybody talks about LeBron investing however X amount of dollars into his body every year. That's your moneymaker, man. You better and you better take that stuff seriously, and kind of just that kind of stuff. You're unique. There's not a template of what a guy who's 7'2" can dribble, pass, and shoot at your age looks like. There's not a lot of that out there. There's a few, but there's not a lot of that out there. People used to talk about Wemby, a comparison, not just skill set, but they're the last guy that looks like this and could do what he does was Ralph Sampson, 40 years ago. These guys come around literally once in a generation. So, Moustapha, and I think another thing too, and kind of last thing I'll say about him is talk about a guy with a lot of attention, a lot of notoriety, pressure even. So I think his humility is something that's going to serve him really well, is not getting caught up in that noise, not getting caught up in being told how great he is. And these are conversations he and I had. And he had plenty of good coaches working with him, that did so much for him. But one thing I feel like he and I would talk about is hey, I don't care how good you are, and you are unbelievable. Don't get me wrong. But you need to approach it like you're not. You need to approach it like you're fighting for a spot, like you're fighting for the hype that you've got, that you're fighting for these rankings that you got. Because like I was saying earlier, these are people that are not in the building with you every day. You need to continue to be in the weight room. I don't care that you're already at UCF. Continue to get in the weight room. Continue to work on your game. Continue to develop and go hard every single time. That's the one thing that is unfortunate when you're 14, 15, 16 years old, some of these guys are, and being just told how good they are. Again, I won't name names, but think about how many examples of guys you've heard that are falling off the map by now because they peaked, they plateaued. That was as good as they'll ever get for one reason or another. Maybe it's because they believed all the hype and was man, look how good I am. I don't need to keep working. I'll be all right. I just can show up at this point. Yeah, the greats are the greats for a reason. They're never satisfied. How many Kevin Durant off-season workout videos do you see of him experimenting with new stuff? You know what I mean? There's just little stuff like that I think just goes such a long way, and just being an insatiable, hunger to continue to get better, to develop, to not be satisfied. And again, that also comes down to like being serious about it. Like I was saying earlier, competitive spirit. Like I want to be the best. Like I really, really want to be the best, but also the humility component. Like just of being like, it's a special thing when you're able to find all of that in one player. And Moustapha definitely has that.
Yeah, well, we wish Moustapha the best of luck in his development path, and I can definitely see, that there's a great mindset to have to instill in players. Like, nothing is a given. Like, no matter what the hype is surrounding anyone, like you got to work to earn it every day, and like work like tomorrow's not guaranteed.
Absolutely.
And some great points as well on kind of maintaining that balance when you're working out and trying, because a lot of guys like from Anthony Davis to LeBron and Melo have shifted their weight around, and maybe there's times where they lose an edge that they had at one point where they're trying to get bigger, but it costs them some mobility or some agility versus vice versa, where LeBron and Melo kind of slimmed down at around halfway through their career and extended their career by becoming more mobile, becoming more agile. And yeah, I think like the stat that always gets thrown around, LeBron spends $1 million a year on his body, probably got a chamber somewhere that he just freezes himself for a little bit or whatever's going on, like Goku or something, and just rehealing everything. But I really appreciate you hopping on the pod today. I'm sure Ime Udoka is watching. He's probably just trying to steal your plays back and forth, see what he can pick up.
He got better things to do. I stole that play. Man, I'm telling you, I don't even remember where I stole it, but I saw that like at a high school level one time. I mean, that's the thing, is there's so many great coaches everywhere, and you can learn, and it's cool, to see guys that have had high school coaching backgrounds, or Joe Mazulla was a Division II guy. You got Josh Schertz at St. Louis now that was killing D2. Just it's cool to see like the respect coaches at all levels are getting. And last thing I'll add is like there's great coaches at every level. If you can coach, they'll find you. Same thing with playing. Like in this social media age, if you can play, people will find you. You know what I mean? So continue to put your head down, put in the work, and good things will happen.
That's for sure, especially in the NBA, as you touched on with guys around the league. Like everyone's watching. You can't hide in the NBA. Like they're going to see the effort, whether you're winning or losing. They're going to see that head go down. They're going to see, just like you mentioned with Gafford or whoever, just on maybe a losing team at one point. But as long as he's still showing up on the impact stats, showing up on the film with the hustle, the rebounds, the defense, the screen setting, the hustle stats, going back to some of the first things you mentioned, like those things translate. They're winning basketball plays. So,
yep.
By the way, do you remember what this opening play was?
Yeah, absolutely. It's very simple. It's out of a horns look, kind of a 1-4 high. You got a guy on each wing, guy at the elbows and horns, kind of a ball handler at the top of the key. One guy curls over the top like on an Iverson cut. One guy goes underneath, kind of to the other side, just loops out underneath. Kind of as soon as you cross the face, the cutter crosses the face of the first guy in the horns, you hit him at the elbow, and then the other guy in the horns kind of takes like 1/2 step up, sets a little back screen, and you just curl him. There's nobody at the rim. There's no help on the backside. You can get a little layup out of that. The Rockets did it the other day. They threw a lob out of it and got a layup. And we weren't throwing lobs out of that play. We were just taking the layup where we got it. But, I mean, it's a very elementary play, but it's amazing what, basketball is, there's no reinventing the wheel, like I was trying to say earlier, and you can still do simple stuff effectively. And that's one thing I try to pride myself on is do simple better, do simple like really well. And I love that. So that Iverson curl little play. People are still running that. I'm sure a billion coaches have run that in the past, and I'm far from the first, and I won't be the last. So,
well, I bet Udoka's just tuning in for the next one, but I hear you. But hey, I mean this was great. I'm really glad we were able to dive into just a ton of different sets and actions that you see around the league. And like message of the day is, hold yourself accountable just like your teammates and your coaches do.
Yep.
Hustle hard, play for the guy next to you, and we stayed learning basketball throughout. This was a great time. I'm glad you made some time, and I appreciate you hopping on the pod today, Brandon.
No, thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to hop on, and I enjoy you do great work, and look forward to listening to more going forward.
You know it. Good luck this season. Can't wait to see it. Have a good one.
Thank you. You as well.
With Ryan.
Learning Basketball is a Swish Theory podcast, hosted from Beyond the Arcade. Hey, that's me. You can find my work on Twitter, YouTube, Substack, and check out the team's website, theswishtheory.com.